Welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Glad that you could join us once again today. Our guest is Andrea. She's a user of Advanced Medical. Advanced Medical is a healthcare supplier who we recently featured on the program that offers expert medical opinions through a physician case manager. And Andrea is here today to talk with us about how she discovered Advanced Medical, what her experience was working with them, and how it brought some value to her. Hello and welcome to the program, Andrea.
Hi, Neal. Thank you for having me.
We, as I said, we recently featured Advanced Medical here on Health Professional Radio as one of our Health Suppliers series segments. And we've been very anxious to, get some feedback from someone who's actually used the platform. Tell us a bit about yourself and your situation and how you came to be connected with Advanced Medical.
Well, Neal, I am, I'm in my early 40s. I have married and we have no children. I've dealt with a number of health issues over the course of as I still continue to consider short life. And unfortunately, over the past few years, we have been faced with infertility. And we've tried a number of outlets, and, you start seeing one doctor and then another, and it becomes quite overwhelming. During this time, my husband came to me and told me that, oh, by the way, my company offers this benefit. And it's called the Expert Medical Opinion. And what they would do is they will secure all of your medical records and then help to answer any questions you have on any number of things. So, he brought it to me with infertility, but with any of my other issues, I could go to them as well. Mm-hmm. And we were at a crossroads. We had reached a point where we were trying to make some decisions, and we had done some rounds of IVF. And they weren't successful. And, it was emotionally draining and really physically hard on my body. Mm-hmm. And as any woman dealt with infertility can tell you, when they give you that moniker of unexplained infertility, it's difficult because you don't, as smart as you are, as educated as you think you can be about something, it's really hard to know that you're making the right decisions, both personally for your body, for your relationship, and then also financially, because these things start to add up. Even if you have good insurance coverage, it's a tough road financially. So when my husband told me he had this benefit, I was kind of shocked because my employer is a large educational institution and we're known for having phenomenal benefits, and I had never heard of something like this. So he joked with me. Yeah, he joked with me that, education is trumped by finance. So his large financial institution beat me with this one. And we started to explore it and we reached out and figured, why not? We looked into how they handled the medical records, what would happen to them in the end, all these things about confidentiality, and because you don't know who these records are being sent to, and you just I think you become a little more protective of yourself when you are going through such a process. But I was paired with a case manager, and my case manager is a physician. And she was absolutely wonderful. It was the first time when I was faced with a medical question and I wasn't sure that somebody said to me, "It's okay, I'll help you." Great. So to give you a little more background, my doctor had come to us and said, we've done these rounds of IVF. It hasn't worked. Your body is just not responding and you're not happy. Like the emotional roller coaster was definitely in full force. And she said, but I want to talk to you about something different, and that you are a perfect candidate for using an egg donor. And while that comes with its own set of emotions and issues, and, everybody has their own view on how this can work for them, she said that I could become pregnant and that I could have a healthy pregnancy, that my body is perfectly fine to carry a child. It just wasn't working for me. Now, it took a little while to digest this and think about it, but then I also realized that I personally have some genetic things in my history, in my family history, that I would pray wouldn't be passed down, that I was afraid of. My father fought ALS for over 4 years. And while it wasn't the genetic form of the disease, I've never met a doctor who could tell me when the sporadic form turns into the genetic form, because it has to start somewhere. They just agree that, yeah, it starts somewhere, but, it's scary to have that, something so huge hanging over your head. Not to mention all the other, seemingly minor things, having now dealt with ALS.
You mentioned how you felt that your physician cared about what was going on with you. Were there some things within your medical record that, not only your condition, concerning your condition, but maybe some things about medical records that you never understood, not just your particular case, but medical records in general? As you said, how they were being viewed, who was going to view them, and maybe some things, terminology that you didn't understand, but maybe were enlightened by your physician who cared about you.
Exactly. Because while I was always familiar with HIPAA and the term HIPAA, because they make you sign every document with this on it in the hospital, I really was explained to me how HIPAA impacts the use and just handling of my documents, because I had to sign off on all these waivers so they could get my medical records from my doctors. And I wanted to know what happened then. And they explained to me that they would get those medical records and they would only share with the doctors that they had chosen. And that afterwards, the medical records were not disseminated widely. They weren't used for research. They weren't used for any other purpose. And they were temporarily stored and then destroyed. And, they could offer me more information if I needed it. But at that point, I really felt comfortable with how they were handling it. Also, to that effect, they let me know who was going to be seeing my medical records in terms of who they were sending the records to. In my case, I was in need of reproductive endocrinologists or fertility specialists to look at my records, and they ended up sending them off to 2 doctors. One was in the Midwest and one was on the East Coast, both very well. I even Googled them, so not only well reviewed, but their resumes. I mean, when I got the final report, I got to see for myself, they included their CVs and their resume, and I got to see exactly who was reviewing my records. And it was such a sense of relief that not only was I dealing with a physician case manager who really asked me questions and walked me through the process, to the point that she said, okay, we've talked about everything. We've talked about your concerns. Let's talk about your questions, and let's rank those questions, because I'll go to these doctors and I will give them these questions so we make sure that they don't miss anything that you need. It made me feel really empowered. It made me feel like I was finally taking control of my destiny in a medical sense. And I've always been very much in control. I know how to deal with doctors. I study things. I talk about things. I have a great team of doctors for all of my issues. But this was a case where I felt kind of out of place and more emotionally invested in what the outcome could be.
Yeah, when you were talking with your physicians, were there instances where maybe a question wasn't readily answered, or maybe it was something that no one had considered? How timely were they in getting back with you if they needed to get back with you and didn't have an answer readily available to any of your questions?
You know what? This may not be the correct answer to your question, but there was the case where they went through my records, and because my physician, my regular physician here for my fertility, was so thorough, they didn't have any questions that they came back to me with. However, they came up with more questions for me to ask. Okay. So it was the case of, one doctor said, I see you ask these questions, but I think you're missing this piece. And another doctor said, I see you're asking these questions, but I also think it would be helpful for you to have, I can't remember the specialist, but you might want to have somebody else look at this because one of your other conditions could play into this factor.
Even more insight into your case.
Exactly. And they offered more insight, and they they brought that, before I got my final report, they had brought that back to my physician case manager, who asked me if she could send out my records to a specialist in that field so we wouldn't have to wait so long to get that answer. So I wouldn't have to wait. If I called my hospital group, I wouldn't have to wait a couple of weeks to get in, or potentially longer, whereas she could have this turnaround in a week or maybe two and have an expert look at it and either kind of calm my fears or just say, you know what, you really should be seen by somebody on this issue. So it was really, I felt like it was incredibly proactive on everybody's part.
So it's like great bedside manner meets efficiency, finally.
Exactly. And, it was one of the things that's so great, and I don't know if people can truly grasp how this works if they haven't participated in the process, but you get a report at the end. So I got spiral-bound reports where these doctors went through pages upon pages explaining everything to me, explaining it in terms that I could understand, explaining it in such detail and making sure that they covered every base, and then giving their recommendations. And their recommendations weren't just, oh, yeah, well, this is a good idea. It was, I think this is a good protocol for you because of X, Y, and Z. Even went so far as to one of them saying, I feel for you. I see your records and I understand how hard this must be for you. So I want you to know that I truly believe that this is the path that could help you achieve your dreams.
So overall,
and, not many doctors say that.
Absolutely. So overall, your feeling of complete satisfaction in using advanced medical, would you say?
Yes, definitely. It's funny. I actually attend an infertility support group. Mm-hmm. And I showed up with my bound reports. Great. And put them on the table and said to every other couple in that room, if you guys don't have this option, you should see if you can get it, if you can secure it on your own, if you can talk to your companies, because look what this is doing for me. And there was a woman next to me who was she started reading through it and started crying because she didn't know something like this was available to her. And she was afraid she would offend her doctor if she took an appointment with another doctor.
And couldn't be farther from the truth. Well, I appreciate you coming in and talking with us today. It's been a pleasure, Andrea. Thanks so much. And I'm hoping that we can talk with you again and get some updates as to how Advanced Medical is continuing to offer you the support that you need.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also at hpr.fm. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, listen in, and download at SoundCloud. And be sure and visit our affiliates page at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au.